Hi, everyone. And hi to you, Babula. Nice to see you
Hello,
again.
Cheryl, you too. Lots to talk about once again.
Oh, gosh, yes. Gosh, absolutely. But I must say before we start, if anyone notices there's a bit of editing, it's because I'm having a coughing or sneezing fit because I've got a cold. So I'm just preparing people. And if I'm chewing something like I'm about to now, I'm not being disrespectful. It's just a cough lolly so that I don't cough through this, which I'm popping in now. So,
Yeah.
so wow. We've got a lot to talk about. You're right.
Mm.
Lots happening in Taurus.
Yes,
And like, oh my God, I looked at the amount of planets. It's like Sun, Moon, Mercury, Jupiter, Uranus, North Node. Like, wow, something is brewing. And it's a lot, whatever it is.
it sure is. Yes, it's really shifted from that focus on Aries to Taurus now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So it's an Earth sign.
Mm-hmm.
So hence the you wearing green, me feeling super green
That's
in the background, and very much feeling a part of Mother Nature, that's for sure.
Mm,
Mm,
absolutely.
mm,
Absolutely. And it's so interesting that shift from, Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, that initial impulse of, fire, the spark of something new.
mm.
And I always use the analogy Aries is like that little seedling that's pushed its way up to reach to the sunlight to come out and begin its growth
Mm,
journey.
mm.
Taurus is the next stage where now it has to sink its roots deep into the earth so that it can become strong and receive the nourishment from the earth to build itself and sustain itself, which is what Taurus is about, that earth connection, getting grounded.
Yeah. I was having a think this morning about that and what might represent this all this Taurus energy. Um, you know, and I remember as a child watching my father breaking in horses in the corral because we lived on a cattle station for a couple of years. And I'm sort of now reflecting on its astrological symbolism because the Taurus energy is very stabilizing. It brings a calming influence. Um, but I was thinking that like my dad was taming the wildness of nature, but he was sort of being that Taurian energy of breaking in the horse, and bringing that calming influence to the horse or
Mm.
controlled influence of nature. And then once the horse sort of settled down, um, it was all okay. So
Yes,
it just reminded me of watching him doing that, and I thought, wow, that's sort of like very taming the nature, isn't it?
it is in many ways. Yeah, it's a what we call a fixed sign,
Mm.
fixed earth, and that has many implications, of course. It's says a lot about the sign of Taurus, the represented by the bull. You were on a cattle station,
Mm.
right? Yeah, on the earth, on the ground. It's a very my dad was a Taurian, ticked every box you could think of that
Mm.
relates to Taurus in his
Mm.
lifetime. And for a long period of time, when I was a kid, he was a farmer. We lived on a farm in Brisbane, but he did he was a builder, all the Taurian things in a long lifetime. He ticked them all off pretty much. But it's that very hands-on, practical, pragmatic, feet on the ground, very productive. Boy, did that man produce some things in his lifetime.
Yes, same with my dad.
Yeah.
Did everything, anything and everything, living on properties basically most of his adult life,
Yes.
raising horses, the cowboy, um,
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
land, and being connected with nature and the horses and livestock um, and everything related to it, breeding, even did
Yes.
saddlery, made some beautiful saddles and bridles and
Right.
embossed them all with the stamping and
Exactly.
sold them at auctions and all sorts of things. So it was a really interesting time. And then as I got a bit older into my teenage years, he'd moved. So because my parents weren't together. And again, being on another property with him, was running a horse riding school, and
Wow.
It was just, and after all the riding during the day, we'd take the horses down to the dam and
Yes.
yes, don't you let those horses roll over,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
And yeah.
and he was a farrier too, so he was very, like you say, practical, hands-on, shoeing horses, all looking after their feet, and it's
Yes.
really interesting.
That it's fascinating to see the astrology and how it plays out and manifests and shows up, and that thing of him making beautiful leather work and the saddlery, and he had to emboss it to make it beautiful. So Taurus is ruled by Venus. So on the one hand, it's eminently practical, like they're so sensible and practical, and to put effort into something, Taurus says, well, there needs to be a result at the end of it. Otherwise, what am I doing this for?
Exactly.
But it's also, as a Venusian sign, as a Venus ruled sign, this love of beautiful things. So it's often, I know a lot of Taurians, a lot of my women friends are Taurians. I seem to know, I've known them all my life, a sister who's a Taurus, another one with Taurus rising. My mother had Taurus. So it's just around me. And this, not only it's a love of beautiful things and appreciation of beauty, but it seems to be an innate capacity and ability to be able to create beauty. They're very artistic and creative in all kinds of ways. My sister with a Taurus ascendant has the most beautiful garden.
Yes.
And it's not just practical, it's gorgeous. It's a work of art. And she weaves and makes all these amazing weavings. And this is so Taurus, it's very Venus, very sensual, very tactile, very physical. There's a word I love using for Taurus, and it's voluptuous.
Yeah, true.
Even very often the body of a Taurian person, it's fleshy, it's got substance. You can often spot a Taurian body. There's a certain real physicality about it in most cases.
Yeah, it's interesting how these planetary influences in our natal chart actually manifest in our physical form, isn't it? I'm always surprised by that.
It really is. Yeah. Yeah. It all does. I remember years ago, I used to know a guy who, how people say, oh, guess what sign I am? That's really difficult because we're made up of many different complex energies astrologically, and that shows physically. But he could pick people's rising sign and moon sign. He's very spot on. This was years ago when I was young. I was very impressed by that. Yeah. So yeah, it all shows up. It all shows up in our physical form. And the word manifest, I was just going to use. To me, Taurus is a sign of manifestation, as are the 3 earth signs, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Taurus is that building, creative, manifesting expression. And of course, another thing that we associate with manifesting is money.
Absolutely. Yes.
And yeah, so it is a huge focus in this sign. It's one of the main themes, money, resources of the earth, banking, the economy, all these things all go hand in hand with Taurus.
Yeah. And I was wondering about Taurus feeling very earthy. And with Jupiter moving into Taurus, I'm wondering, for 12 months, I'm wondering how that will stabilize the earth and the weather and the cyclones, the earthquakes, the volcanic eruptions, because we've had quite a few, and the floods and all that. Do you think it'll bring a stabilizing influence to that?
That's a great question, Cheryl, and I've been pondering this as well. It's I think there are many parts to that, but I think it's a really good question. Taurus is a very stabilizing energy. Like, Taurians are the people who can live in the one house their whole life, or at least a huge chunk of 40 years, stay in the one job. Like my Taurian sister, she was a primary school teacher, totally dedicated to her career, her job, 45 years. And we used to talk about it. She'd tell me all the troubles and issues that were going on. I think, how can you even stay there? I wouldn't last 5 minutes in that environment. With all the controls that were being put on them. But there's capacity to hang in there. and keep going, this determination. I'm not going to give up because I'm here for the children,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
So stability.
Yeah. I was just thinking, not giving up. It's a little bit Saturnian, but different because Saturn endures. But Taurus
Exactly.
just says, I'm not giving up because I'm damn stubborn.
Exactly. It gets down to that, you know, and
Yes.
there's huge resistance to change.
My son-in-law is a Taurus, and my daughter's forever going, oh my God, Mum.
That's right. Because if you're a great tree sinking roots down into the earth, you're sinking those roots in for that tree to become so strong and stable. Even, you know, a strong storm isn't going to knock it down. I mean, eventually all trees, you know, when they get old and weak, a storm will knock it down. But by and large, for, you know, most of its life, those roots hold it. And that's the impulse, isn't it, in Taurus? Look, my father, when he was a builder, like, and he built our house, and if the regulations for foundations were that big, that thick, he'd make them that thick.
Yes, yes.
Right? Like, nothing's going to knock down my house.
Yes.
You know, like the three little pigs in the house of brick. I mean, it's like, you know, like he's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so it's very much about stability, huge resistance to change. But remember, Uranus is still in Taurus and came into Taurus in 2018, 2019, and has still got a couple of years to go. And it's an agent and a force of tremendous change and upheaval. So things have been very bumpy and rocky for Taurians and people with Taurus planets, and wherever Taurus sits in our chart, whether we've got planets there or not, you know, whatever that house area of our chart is, things have been very changeable. And now with Jupiter's interesting. It's a very positive energy. Fundamentally, we call it the Great Benefic. Traditionally, that's what it was known as, the Great Benefic, meaning its principle and energy basically brings abundance and bounty and good fortune, and was known as the lucky planet, and abundance and increase.
Magnification, I think.
Yes, it magnifies and expands. Like, its single number one keyword is expansion. And so it increases. So there's more now. And you think, well, what could be the negative expressions of Jupiter? Can be too much.
Yes, excessive.
Excess, you know, just overblown, like becoming overconfidence, and we overextend ourselves,
Yes.
you know, beyond our capacity to hold or handle or cope with something. Or just seeing in Taurus, it could be greed. Like, if we would look at the negative expression, you know,
Yes.
oh, that's not enough, I need more, I'll have yours as well, like, give me that, that's mine, you know, I want it all.
Because Taurus, one of the key words is possessive, isn't it? So I was thinking about that, and I thought, well, there you go. One of the seven deadly sins is greed. So I could see that could happen. So there's this need to gather and keep, isn't there?
That's right. And
Gather.
keep it
Yeah.
for myself, you know, we're sort of it's the second sign. So it's in the early stages, and I'm not at all suggesting it's not evolved, because every sign operates on many levels, and there's a very highly evolved expression of Taurus. Absolutely, there is. But it is on a very personal level, that sense of that desire, and desire is a good Taurus word too, that desire for security. And security means I don't feel secure if I don't own my own house or have X amount of dollars in the bank, or, you know, drive a good car. And I'm not dissing any of that. Like, these are fundamental realities of human life on this planet, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, for our survival, we need a certain amount of material, you know, stability and security and abundance and so on, to live a rich, full life. But and some might question, well, do you really need any of that? So, but another thing about Jupiter is, in terms of stability, you know, in mythology, Jupiter, Zeus, he's Zeus in the Greek mythology and Jupiter in the Roman, he threw thunderbolts around.
Mm.
So it can be a big energy that can be it can be in Taurus, I think, things like big earth movements, big earth upheavals.
Okay. Yeah.
And in 2024, still in Taurus, he will join up with Uranus, who's moving towards the last degrees of Taurus. That could be quite explosive, even.
Yeah. Bye bye Yellowstone. People have been predicting that for years, haven't they? Oh,
Yeah. So, so it is really interesting. There is always a negative expression to every energy, even something as fundamentally positive as Jupiter.
yeah. I was thinking that this powerful Taurus stellium energy, um, that's like sustained momentum. Something needs to happen, something's got to give, something's going to happen. That sort of feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic phrase for it, sustained momentum. And as you said that, what I was seeing was, because I've known a lot of Taurians in my life, what I've witnessed and growing up as a child, because my family's full of that energy, was slow to action and slow to temper. But once they're on the move, like step back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Step back, because it's the bull, and bulls are really powerful. And I grew up on a small farm in Brisbane, as I said, and we had a bull and these powerful shoulders. That's why Taurians often have quite powerful physical bodies. And, the bull can stand there, but if that bull is riled, you get out of the way, because
Yeah.
there's so much power. It's a fixed sign. These are signs of tremendous power. That sustained momentum, like you get out of the way. When a Taurian's temper is up, step back. Like just leave them alone, because there's so much power in that sign and in that energy and in that body.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you think this well, actually you can go into the stellium, I suppose, but
Yeah, we will.
all these planets that are going into Taurus, it's going to be a very powerful 12 months, isn't it?
It really is.
A
And
lot.
a lot. And so I think, we need to talk about individually how that can benefit us, because wherever Jupiter is will be bringing benefit to that energy of that sign, but also where's that in our chart, like what house, what area of our life is it going to activate and want to bring increase and abundance and a positive uplifting kind of an influence, and how do we make the most of that, but also in the world what that might look like as. And that's another sort of part of the answer to your question before, because we've got to look at it within the context of what's going on in the world currently. And
Yeah. And I was thinking while you were talking, like Taurus doesn't like change, but Jupiter's going to come along, the herald of truth.
yes,
Okay, but you need to know this.
yes,
Yeah. Or it may be a change in higher beliefs, in our beliefs about things,
exactly.
that sort of stuff. So,
Exactly. Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, the old ruler of Pisces as well, but it's very much about our higher aspirations, our quest for truth, for higher meaning. So this, like for many, this could be a time of getting really educated about money and finances and how that operates in this world we live in, because it ain't what we've been led to believe, and we do need to be educated, and we're not educated. And there's a reason why we're not educated properly on how it all works. And it's all changing under our noses right now.
yeah.
And this brings me to some very interesting part of the Taurus story. Years ago, I started to notice, way back when I was learning, I used to do a lot of research. I still do, but back then I was like a woman possessed. I would just like have a nose in astrology books and charts like
Yeah.
24. And I started to notice a lot of the dictators of the world, past and present, were Taurians. And so that set me on a trail of really looking further. And I just collected this huge number of charts of real dictators, people who were motivated by the desire to own and control everything. Taurus, not every single one of them, but a high percentage of them, because that extreme expression is, extreme, obscene wealth that says it's all mine. And, I'll have that country and I'll take that country and I'll take this country and I'll take all that gold and I'm going to have all that gold and all that land and all that property, and it's all for me. And that's what's going on in the world right now.
I'm wondering if Bill Gates is a Taurian, because he's buying, is he? But he's buying up all the farming land, isn't he?
Exactly.
I'm keeping it. It's mine. I'm going to control that.
Yeah, that's right. And he's not farming it.
No.
So it's having a huge impact on food production.
Yeah. Interesting.
So these are all Taurian issues. And so I think, this excessive greed and desire for a very few people at the very, very top to have it, to take it all, they've said it out of their mouths. I'm not saying anything that's not true. They've spoken the words, you will own nothing and be happy, and because we're going to have it all.
Yeah. And it's really about the underlying issue of the voice in Australia about, actually it's the land grab, isn't it?
Land, exactly.
Yes, it's about controlling all of Australia's land.
That's right.
Not the Aboriginal people.
That's right.
But other
that's
countries.
Right. Yeah. So I think one of the positive things around this issue that can come out is that people begin to see more or discover or learn. I think there's likely to be more exposure and revelation. It's already there for people who care to look. It's right in front of our face if we care to see it and look. But I think it's going to come out more and more in ways that, you'd have to be blind not to see it, because it will start to impact people directly. Going to your ATM to take money out and there's nothing there. Like, that's when the Taurian reality hits home. I'm already hearing these stories from individuals.
Yeah.
Online, around the world, people telling us these stories about, well, the banks are already doing things like this, like even here in Australia. So that can really help to show people what's actually going on, because it will be an immediate, direct, tangible Taurus experience, not just an abstract idea. It becomes real, which is Taurus. It's real. Oh, yeah, there's a lot around all this. And of course, the other aspect of all this, I think, is super important now and for the next 12 months is Gaia, the earth, nature. That beautiful image. We didn't arrange to both wear green, but we just both intuitively wore green today. And that need to really connect with land and nature.
So do you think people are going to go and plant more things in their veggie garden, which we started in 2020?
You bet.
I think I'm going to expand mine.
That's right. Expand the vegetable garden. Exactly. So you can grow more and become more sustainable. I know this is a personal story, but they illustrate these things. It wasn't until I was in my 40s that my father explained in a conversation with me and one of my sisters, I think, why he actually bought that land in Brisbane and started a farm when we were just young children. And and this is a beautiful expression of Taurus. He said, because, of that generation, he went to the war. He was in the war. He was born in the 20s. So he said, if there is another war, I need to know that we have enough land so that all the family can live here and be self-sustaining and grow enough food to survive. Everyone can live here. It's a fairly big family. The family will be here on the land and be able to grow food. And I just looked at him and went, wow, I didn't realize that was his primary motivation for doing that.
Yeah.
You see, Taurus, really basic, down-to-earth, fundamental, on the land, grow your own food.
And secure. feeling secure.
It's feeling secure, and that we'd all be together. You know, whether if there were kids and grandkids, and everyone's here, and we can survive on the land.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, the government came and took the land, but that's another. At least you do what you can in a very practical, pragmatic way. You know. Yeah.
So maybe we should start on those dates.
Yes, let's have a good look.
Put it into their diaries, and
that's right, and break it all down. So I want to start with just what am I looking at here? Oh, that's not the right sheet. I've got the right sheet, but I've just taken the wrong one out. Here it is. Here's the one I'm after. That's an old. Okay, on the 17th of May, Jupiter, which is what we're talking about, moved into Taurus. So Jupiter's just gone into Taurus. It's now at 0 degrees of Taurus, and we'll be spending the next 12 months in this sign. On the 18th of May, Jupiter at 0 degrees of Taurus makes an exact square to Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So let's unpack that a little bit, because this is an important and quite powerful combination. Jupiter's a big, big energy. Pluto is a powerful, powerful, powerful energy. So this is a strong story, and they're both at 0 degrees of a fixed sign. Squares that are square to each other, signs that are square to each other, there's a certain tension and conflict because they operate in very different ways. So Jupiter in Taurus is so earthy and grounded and natural and organic and physical and tangible. Aquarius, it's mind, intelligence, consciousness, humanity, sky, universe, cosmos, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this push and pull between these two energies of, we could literally say, earth and sky, or mind and physical. And how do they operate with this tension, and how do they resolve that tension? Squares have to take some kind of action, because of the pressure and the tension of that, these two energies kind of pushing up hard against each other. And so this can be, and at 0 degrees of a sign, you've got something that's wanting to break through and be expressed and birthed in a very new way. Right?
Yep. I'm just,
so,
sorry, I was going to say, while you're saying that, I'm getting this impression, when you talk about earth and sky, I always think heaven on earth. You've got Jupiter coming in there, which is all about our higher beliefs and religion and spirituality and those sorts of things. And you've got this earthiness, but you've got this square going on with Aquarius. So it's almost like it's not an opposition, as you say, it's a square, but it's something wants to crunch together, isn't it?
Yes. And huge things can come out of that tension, and it's like there's lots of ways you can image it. It's that being like star beings here in this 3D dimensional reality in these physical bodies, and sometimes I feel like I just like to expand back out of the body and go back home to the cosmos, thanks very much. But then there's also the beauty and the wonder and the extraordinary experience of being here on this incredibly beautiful planet in these physical forms, and how to, and it reminds me too of things like technology and AI. Versus pushing up against the organic physical realm. Right? Like, are we going to manufacture our food in factories using technology and all sorts of very weird ingredients, or are we going to grow it in the earth? It's
also about transhumanism, isn't it?
Exactly.
About how much of our physiology becomes technical.
Exactly.
As well, like how much are we going to put into our bodies of AI for good reasons at times, for help our health, but at
Sure.
other times not so great.
That's right.
Yeah, so you can
And
create these super soldiers, that sort of thing.
yes. And there are forces on the planet who are literally anti-nature
Yeah.
and anti-human and anti-biology.
Yep. Mm.
Yep. So that's all part of this, this is all part of that. And, the digital economy and so on and so on, money. Like in Taurus, money is real. It's cash in your hand that you can hold and count and put. It's physical metals like gold and silver that you hold and you can see, and it has a value and you can exchange it. Or is money only digital?
Yeah.
And just numbers on a computer that somebody else somewhere has control over.
So when you have a square like that, it's about two forces pushing up against each other, but in that, something has to break through and then integrate or create, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So a new form in all of these things we're talking about is wanting to come through and be birthed. It's just which direction is that going to go? Is it going to go in a direction that's been genuinely beneficial to us or harmful to us? Right. So, but something new is definitely wanting to break through. Absolutely.
And there's a split in consciousness, I have to say, about all of this, because Barry was telling me that he went to the bank and yes, and he wanted to draw money. No, sorry, went to the post office and wanted to pay something in money, and the woman behind him said, "I'm in cash," and she said, "Cash? You're not using cash, are you?" And I said to him, "How old was she?" He said, "Oh, probably in her 80s." I went, "What?"
Wow.
I'm so amazed. But again, here's this sort of this breaking through of consciousness about or integration of how we're going to do that, because let's face it, we're not going, you and I and other people we know are using cash as much as possible. And I always say at the checkout, keeping cash alive, paying everything cash.
I say the same thing. That's right.
But in the future, I can see we're just slowing it down. It's actually inevitable that it's all going to go digital, I think. So, or not all of it, but there's going to be very few outlets where you can actually pay cash.
Yes. Well, it's starting to happen already.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting, very much like you say. And in Taurus, about money.
That's right. And the whole issue of land ownership, which is another area, like even, people have a mortgage. Who actually owns your mortgage, even if you've paid it off?
Yeah, good luck trying to get a deed.
Who actually owns your piece of land? Like this, these are big themes and I think this particular story this year with Jupiter in Taurus in that square, and it's coming up to the north node, to the conjunction to the north node, and next year conjunct Uranus. A lot more is going to unfold over this particular issue in the coming months. It's already in our face, but it's going to become so in our face. People who aren't even aware of it as an issue are going to have to be aware of it. When it's funny, isn't it? Money is one of those things, when it hits our actual experience, it's like reality hits home. Or when you go to the supermarket and there's no food on the shelves, like it's that kind of reality. Very Taurus.
And
I'm of an age, honestly, I grew up, my parents had a huge veggie garden and fruit trees down the backyard, just in suburban Brisbane. But when normal homes had much bigger piece of land than they do now, and all of my grandparents, and I say all, I had quite a lot of them, they lived to a ripe old age in my family. They all had these huge backyards with chickens and ducks and vegetables and fruit trees and grapevines, and that was normal to me.
Yes.
And so many people now have no direct experience of that whatsoever.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, very interesting. So let's keep going with so that's 17th and 18th, Jupiter moving into Taurus, making this very powerful square. I gave the exact date of the square to on the 18th, but it's really around that all week,
Yep.
this whole kind of period. Then on the 20th, the new moon, the sun and the moon come together at 28 degrees of Taurus, just before the sun leaves Taurus.
Yep.
So that new moon is at 1:53 a.m. Brisbane time, east coast of Australia time, on the 20th of May, which is Saturday.
Yeah.
And something I haven't talked much about these, and I'm considering later in the year doing a workshop on this, if not this year, certainly next year, on the planets that are way, way, way out beyond Pluto. Sometimes they're called the trans-Neptunian planets. They're way out there in the Oort cloud and the Kuiper belt, like these new bodies. And there's one called Sedna that was discovered in 2003. She is at 29 degrees of Taurus, and she's actually sitting right on this new moon.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just going to bring her in briefly because she's so significantly connected to this new moon. So just briefly, the story, like the mythology of Sedna, she was an Inuit goddess of the Arctic North, of the frozen Arctic North. And it's quite a complex story with a few different variations in the versions, as you'll always get with myths. But she was a young, beautiful woman who was said to always, be admiring her beauty, Taurus, and she was, discarding suitors or rejecting suitors. Her father wanted her to get married, and she's just like, no, I don't want him, and I don't want him. And the main version that I've read over the years is that her father forced her to marry this man who took her away to his island, and it actually turned into a crow, and he mistreated her and abused her and so on. And she escaped and went back to her father. He put her in a boat to take her back to her husband, right? And what happened? I think she jumped out of the boat, if I recall correctly, or he threw her overboard. His father threw her overboard, and she tried to climb back in the boat. He chopped off her fingers.
Oh, no.
She fell into the sea, and her fingers fell into the sea. The fingers became seals, and she went down to the bottom of the sea and became this goddess of the oceanic depths. But she became this goddess of abundance, and it's said that they gave homage to Sedna for all the seals and the fish that fed them. So she has something to do. It's a complex story. There's a lot in it, to do with women, and the control of women. But that she's very much about feeding the people, which is very Taurus.
Yeah.
Even from the sea.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just find that really interesting that she's right there, just 1 degree off this new moon.
Yeah.
And there's certainly a lot going on in our seas with, seafood, fish numbers going down and down. And I'm seeing a lot lately about the poor farming practices of, seafood farming and salmon farming. It's just disgusting. So the other thing that occurs to me as I look at the new moon chart in late Taurus conjunct Sedna is that the sun and moon Sedna are also making a almost exact sextile to Neptune, which is in Pisces, which is the ocean and the sea. So, yeah, I'm curious, to watch this space and see what might show up around that. Okay, so then moving on to the next piece of the story is the 21st of May, so the day after the new moon. So we're getting the sequence, day after day, something's happening. On the 21st, Mars leaves Cancer. So Mars has been in Cancer now for about 6 weeks and moves to 0 degrees of Leo.
Oh, okay.
Another fixed sign. So we have Jupiter at 0 Taurus, Pluto at 0 of Aquarius, and Mars at 0 of Leo. 3 fixed signs, all with these very strong dynamic energies at 0 degrees of 3 of the 4 fixed signs, making what we call a T-square.
Yeah.
That's a really strong configuration. So around that whole week, this pattern is sort of, it's like a holding pattern in these fixed signs. It's very dynamic. It's very strong. It's quite powerful.
Yep.
There's a lot of push and pull going on, from these. And you see, I think of the 4 fixed signs, if you had them all sitting around a 4-sided table trying to resolve an issue, and each one would be stubbornly and resistingly holding their position, it could take quite a while for resolution for them to come.
Yeah. Wow.
They're going to push up against each other.
Yeah. Mm.
Mars in Leo is about the individual.
Yeah.
And, it's that expression, but that's not going to work for me. And Pluto in Aquarius is like, but I'm thinking about the whole.
Yeah. Yeah.
The whole community.
Yeah. Not
That
me,
doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
That's right. And the Taurus side wants to be, really practical and sensible about this. So, that's just one simple expression or demonstration of it, but it's a lot of energy. And so we'll see it demonstrated in the world around us. We'll see it in relationship dynamics. It will show up in many different ways. And in our own chart, we look to where these points sit in our own chart.
Yeah. Yeah.
The kinds of issues they might be activating. But a lot could come out of this. Mars opposite Pluto is a very powerful combination of energies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's that Leo Aquarius dilemma of the individual and individual autonomy and sovereignty within the context of the whole and the group. And it's not that one is better or more right than the other. It's how does that work? It can also be issues around certain leaders, Mars in Leo.
Yep.
People in positions of leadership.
What about Charles?
Yes.
Yeah, King Charles.
Well, yes. Well, his moon, if I remember correctly, I think it's at 0 of Taurus.
Uh-huh.
So these planets are all going to hit his chart very strongly.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a 0-1. I think it's 0 from memory. Okay, and then on the same day, on the 21st, when Mars is exactly opposite Pluto, the Sun leaves Taurus and moves into Gemini. So there's an immediate change of energy as the Sun shifts signs. And that's another, every sign that comes after the preceding one, it's always a complete change. They're always really different signs next to each other. So Taurus is fixed earth, very grounded, very pragmatic, very organized. Gemini is air and mutable. Everything's constantly moving.
Yeah, flighty, all over the place.
And the mind is busy, and there's communication and lots of activity going on.
Not particularly organized either.
No, because like Gemini would find the Taurian things a bit dull and boring.
Yeah.
Not interesting enough.
Yes, yeah, and Gemini's curious, isn't it?
Totally curious.
Yeah.
And thrives on variety and interesting ideas and conversation and communication and thoughts. And so that's another change. And then on the 23rd, Mars makes Jupiter makes the exact square to Pluto, but it's really all in place, really for the whole second half of May, those planets in the early fixed signs. And then, there's other things that happen. I'm just aware of time. On the 2nd of June, just before the full moon, Jupiter, now at 3 degrees of Taurus, makes an exact conjunction with the North Node at 3 degrees of Taurus. So in that, Jupiter's really now in the conjunction, but it becomes exact on the 2nd of June. Now, 3 degrees of Taurus is a degree that I've always been very aware of, because for two reasons. It's the very degree that Chiron was discovered in 1977. Chiron was discovered in 1977 when it was at 3 degrees of Taurus. So I've always considered it to be the Chiron degree or the chirotic degree. In the Sabian symbols, which is like a channeled image for every degree of the zodiac, it's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Right? Quite appropriate for Taurus, a sign of, you know, money and wealth and so on.
Leprechauns.
The leprechauns. And, you know, people often say if you're having a Jupiter transit, you know, make a wish on the Jupiter transit. Buy a lotto ticket on the Jupiter transit, right? Open yourself up to positive inspiration and possibilities and you know, ask for a blessing from Jupiter for the, you know, bounty and the benefit that might be available at that time. So I just want to offer these things to draw on that positive influence of Jupiter and to consider where this sits in your birth chart. What house is this in? And like Jupiter, Taurus for me sits across the 8th and the 9th house. So the 9th house cusp is around 9. So this conjunction will still be in my 8th, but in a couple of months, Jupiter will move into my 9th house, which is quite exciting, actually. So if you understand the basic themes of the houses, you get a sense of what area of life this is active in and what it's what it's influencing and what area of your life this possibility of real abundance and growth can be available to you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying much after that coughing fit.
No, you don't need to. No, just that's right.
Yes, so that was just before the full moon, is that right?
Yes, and then the full moon occurs on the 4th of June. Right, at 13 degrees of Sagittarius, because the sun is now in Gemini.
Yeah.
And by the 4th, the sun gets to 13 of Gemini and makes the opposition to the moon at 13. So it's a Gemini Sagittarius full moon. So we've still got Jupiter in the North Node and Uranus in Taurus. But now there's this mutable energy kicking in with Gemini Sagittarius. So there's a sense of movement and change.
Yeah.
And variety. You know, like if you were to ask a Gemini Sag person, you know, how would they feel about the thought of staying in one job for 45 years? I'd go, what? Like, it's just not conceivable. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's always change. Yeah.
Always change. Tremendous need for variety and stimulation to experience many, many, many things. Then to exchange information and knowledge about all of that.
Yeah.
You know, the communication thing. And I just want to then jump ahead a little bit to round this off, that on the 11th of June, Pluto, which is now retrograde, but still currently at 0 of Aquarius, will actually slip back into Capricorn. And remain, we'll talk more about that next time.
Yeah.
Will then remain in Capricorn for the rest of the year and then touch into Aquarius again next year. So we're not done with the Capricorn theme yet. As we know, it's evident in the world.
Yeah.
And there'll be a lot to say coming up through June and July about Leo, because a lot going on in Leo coming up in the next couple of months.
Okay.
A lot of interesting things going on in Leo.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot. Again, a lot to soak up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
So this next 12 months is going to be fascinating to observe. May not be fascinating to live it, but fascinating to observe.
Fascinating to observe. And of course, yes, we all have our own very personal, direct experience of these things in our actual life.
Yes. Yeah.
That's right. You know, day by day by day.
Yeah.
But the astrology, that information gives us a certain perspective, you know, and a capacity to understand it and to see it in another way. Yeah.
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 That's great. Now you've got a workshop coming up, don't you, about karma?
I do, Cheryl. I do. And it's on, is it the 4th? I think it's the first Sunday of June. I think it's the 4th.
Yes, it is.
There
Karma
you
in the
go.
birth chart.
It's all about karma. That's right. Karma in the birth chart. And what do we look at in the birth chart? Like the whole birth chart, we can actually read as a karmic story.
Yeah.
Because we come in with that chart on a continuum from where we were last time.
Yeah.
And but there are certain key factors, which are mainly the south node of the moon herself, Saturn, of course, the lord of karma. Pluto's important. Retrograde planets are very karmic as well. And then there's other things like, I think the 12th house is in ways quite karmic as well. So lots of different things, but we're going to unpack all of that and have a look at that and consider, for people to bring their charts and to see what might be revealed about these karmic issues. And I think while Saturn's in Pisces now for these 3 years, I think karma is a real living issue for us all collective. I think personally, one way I see Saturn going through Pisces is humanity's going through a whole collective karmic reckoning.
Yes. Yeah. Mm.
I think, Pisces 12th house, I think, has a lot of kind of karmic as the last sign of the zodiac.
Oh, well, I'll be there.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
it's just been coming up for me a lot lately, just more and more. I've just been pondering more about karma. So yeah, thought let's have a look at that.
yeah. Oh, thank you for that. And thank you for all that information that we are about to absorb. Amen.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, so everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, please like it, please share it, and please leave your comments if you want to. We always love to hear the comments,
Yes.
and reply to them. So until next time, until the next lunar cycle, everyone, please stay safe, and we'll see you then.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, so bye for now.